Good morning, Singapore. Good morning, Australia. And if I've got my timings right, good afternoon in New Zealand. Thank you for joining us. This is a 1 hour long webinar brought to you by Vistar Media. And we're here to discuss the AdTECH Out of Home Sydney conference that took place in September, mainly for those of you who couldn't make it. Again, thanks for joining us. We want to make this a very interactive session. Let me just introduce you to the panelists that we have today. Having held a similar role at APN Outdoor, Cassandra Cameron leads an expanded JCDecaux trading and sales operation team, responsible for the design and execution of the company's revenue strategy, as well as providing commercial insights, revenue analytics, and modeling. She's been with Decaux for almost 2 years, but started at APN back in 2009 before the merger. Laura is from the Shopper Media Group, and before, she's been there for 3 years. But I think, Laura, you came from the wider media world before then.
Yes, I did. I started way back in 2007 with Nova, and I've worked for a number of media owners in both London and in Sydney, News Limited, Global Radio. And before coming to Shopper, I was in a role with 7 West Media, where I was responsible for launching their West Australian digital and programmatic offering in the Sydney market. So quite a diverse media background.
Ben has been with Vistar Media for the last 2 years. I think, Ben, you were the first employee?
That's right, Adrian.
But Ben, I know he looks incredibly young. He started, I think, with iCorporation, for those of you who can go back to 2006. Of course, that was acquired by DailyDOOH Media. Vistar Media is growing a lot in the region. You started off as the first employee. What are you up to about now?
That's right. Even in the midst of a pandemic, Adrian, we've been really fortunate to grow significantly year over year. We've been able to grow out the team from lonely old me to now having 4 on deck, and that team will grow in the next 3 to 6 months also, as we're scaling out now into New Zealand and also Southeast Asia.
Right. You made an announcement about New Zealand, I think, during the conference last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, really excited to be in New Zealand live and running campaigns now, which has been great.
Brilliant. Okay, let's start talking about the conference. Again, I'm encouraging everybody to ask questions once we get started. I'll start with you, Cassandra. Cassandra chaired the Scaling Programmatic Predictions panel. Cassandra, I don't know if we've told you this, but it was voted the best panel of the day. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
It also had Group M's Vanessa Hunt on it, and she was both voted the best speaker of the day. So something of a double whammy there. Well done. You must be doing something right.
Very strong panel. It made my job very easy.
Good. Tell us a little bit about the panel, because obviously being the most popular one, let's start there.
Yeah, sure, Adrian. I think that there was a really great energy on stage and a genuine passion on display on the day. It was clear that the panelists were really, truly excited about and really believed in the growth of programmatic out of home. And I think there is some contention in the local market as to how beneficial programmatic out of home will be for publishers and advertisers alike. So I think it was really exciting to see that genuine belief and excitement. Not just for the benefits that it affords advertisers and agencies on the buy side, but also the benefits for publishers and the possibility of substantial revenue growth for the channel. I think encouragingly as well, there seemed to be very clear alignment with respect to the key requirements for scaling programmatic in 2021 and beyond. And they were called out on the day as standardization, education, and measurement. So that alignment is encouraging, I think, from the buy side and the sell side. We know what we need to do, and now it's just about getting out there and doing it.
And Ben and Laura, you were sitting in the audience listening to this. What was your take?
Well, I have to agree. It was, for me, the best panel of the day. I voted that. I also voted Ness to be the best speaker of the day. I think for me, a couple of things really stood out that Ness touched on. And one of those was like fear and inertia. And she mentioned it a few times. And I think media owners can be a little bit fearful of programmatic because it's new and it's unknown and a bit scary. I guess we can kind of compare ourselves maybe to where BVOD was a few years ago, a little bit hesitant or resistant. But, I think that if we keep working together, keep working with our media agencies, then we can kind of alleviate some of the fears we have.
totally agree there. I think there was a real direct correlation between the votes were cast as well for obviously great speakers, but also panels that were really positive in getting behind the programmatic outdoor evolution, if you will, which was great to see. And you had some really great speakers there making some really big statements, which really resonated with the audience and started to get everyone talking. You heard there about the trade desk talking about, in the not too distant future, maybe 10 years from now, that all advertising will be traded, via the internet. You had Ness coming out saying that, in 2021, they'd like to put 10% of all out of home to start to be programmatically traded, and start to put statements around that. And also encouragement that, once we can get alignment as well, as around audience measurement, which was brought up there by Group M, well, then we can start to scale even further.
Okay, we have our first question.
Sorry,
Laura.
I was just going to jump in there because I guess Ness did touch on that 10%, but I think she focused on, instead of talking about, pushing share around from out of home, let's actually grow that 10% of the pie through new advertisers coming into the category. And I think that's what programmatic will enable us to do. And I mean, we've definitely seen it at Shopper Media. We've had about 20 new clients since we started trading programmatically. And I think that is what's going to take out of home from 6% to 10%.
Yeah, I think that's such a critical point, Laura. I couldn't agree more. I think when we think about scaling programmatic, I think the comments made by Patrick Darcy earlier in the day in his The Big Picture keynote were really resonated with me. And he spoke about just because you can doesn't mean you should. And of course, when it comes to programmatic out of home, we should be thinking about and not or. I think there will always be a role for traditional broadcast out of home campaigns. And so it's important for advertisers and media planners and of course buyers to be thinking really carefully about the strategic objectives of each individual campaign and then choose the best method of execution based on those objectives. And sometimes that will be to trade programmatically, but often it won't be. Often it will be to continue to buy via direct IO. For us as a publisher, scaling programmatic successfully certainly doesn't mean moving investment from a direct IO sense into programmatic campaigns, and advertisers should definitely not be looking to execute programmatically just because they can. I think it's a real opportunity for us to grow the channel. There's $1 billion being spent by Australian advertisers in online video, and we would love to pull some of that money onto our real world screens. So I think for those reasons, we're not in a hurry. Significant growth from programmatic will come. It may take time, but we just need to stay the course and do it right. We've got the benefits of hindsight. We know the mistakes that were made in the online world. We've seen them, and we can do better for out of home. And I'm really positive about the outlook for us in 2021 and beyond.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we had a question from Melbourne, but Laura and Cassandra, I think you've both answered that one. That was what was needed to scale in the year. Another question from Melbourne, just quickly, what's the most exciting thing that AdTECH and Programmatic DOOH has in store in 2021?
I'm happy to take that one. For me, it's new and diversified supply. At JCDecaux, we've just completed our first local DSP integration with Vistar, and we'll have completed integrations with Vistar and Verizon by the end of the month, with a number of DSPs to come before the end of the year. So we're incredibly excited to be ready to publish some of the absolute best premium out-of-home inventory across our street furniture, roadside large format, airport and rail environments for advertisers across both Australia and New Zealand in 2021. And I think that new supply will really drive demand in this space. I hope so.
Ben?
It certainly will. I agree. For me, I'm really excited now that we've got significant scale across the media owners. So with JCDecaux coming on board and joining our already existing partners being QMS, Shopper Media, VMO, Tonic, etc. Now we've got really good diversification of media owners, but also really good diversification of venue types to create a really active marketplace. Secondly, and to that point, seeing new buyers coming into the category. So if Q4 is anything to go by, I'm really excited about the omni-channel DSPs and the types of new dollars that they're bringing through. I'm really excited about the agency trading desks, seeing now not only just Matterkind transacting, but Resolution starting to come to the fore as well. Dentsu booking their first campaigns, which has been great. And then also the indies like Bench here in Australia and Acquire in New Zealand, bringing new dollars and building out the category.
And I agree with that. It is really exciting, I think. We've done a little bit of work with MIQ in looking at case studies to show how out-of-home really complements other media like online. And those kind of omni-channel DSPs can really help us to build case studies and show that. So it's really exciting to, get new brands in and really start to show the power of out-of-home and how it does deliver to other media.
Okay. I'm just going to jump back now. So another question's come in. This one's from Adelaide. The Olympics has obviously been pushed back a year. Will that be carried out programmatically, you think, or you see an uplift, or would it be done in previous years, similar to previous years? Cassandra, can I start with you?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question, Adrian, and I guess we'll see. We certainly do tend to see an uplift in advertising dollars in an Olympic year, and certainly around the time of the Games. We had a strong forward book for 2020, but obviously the delay of the Tokyo Olympics has seen that money shift. So we certainly hope to see advertisers come back and programmatic opportunities for them to be really creative and tailor their message, be very responsive to outcomes in the Games are really exciting. They're things that they have been able to do before, but programmatic transacting allows them to do it in a much more streamlined, efficient way. And so, yeah, I hope we do see some advertisers being really creative and trying out the new tools available to them.
Laura, is that something that you see at Shopper Media or will see, you think?
Absolutely, I have to agree. I think it's really exciting what we can do in programmatic, to your point, Cassandra, in terms of being able to deliver, creative that is really relevant and resonates to an audience at the right time and place. So I think absolutely we'll definitely see that happening in programmatic space.
Well, fingers crossed that the Olympics happens in a sizable manner for everybody involved. So let's keep our fingers crossed. I'm going to try and give a flavour now to the people who are on the call who didn't manage to get to Sydney in September for the conference. Our panels, when we do the AdTech conferences, are normally very popular because we work hard at getting people like Cassandra, who can obviously moderate things very well, obviously by all the voting that you received. And we try and get some people who don't always agree with each other. People don't like agree-a-thons a lot. Not all the panels necessarily worked out. We had one panel, I think it was in the morning. Maybe people weren't quite awake then. It was the big out-of-home supply side picture. And this was a panel that the industry associations were keen for us to do because it had representatives from U Media, Torch Media. Embarrassingly, Cassandra, it had your boss, Steve O'Connor, on the panel and QMS, and it was chaired by Charles at the OMA. It didn't work very well, was the feedback we got from the audience. So look, I want to, warts and all. It worked last year. We did a similar thing. I won't start with you, Cassandra. I'll let you think about the answer. But Laura, any thoughts? I mean, it wasn't really well received at all.
I don't know. I don't think it was that bad personally. I feel that, the CEOs kind of gave the answers to how data and tech are driving the entire business and not just programmatic. Because data and tech does have, I guess, a broader use than just programmatic technology. I mean, if we look at what data has enabled media owners to do in the out-of-home space since COVID, it's pretty exceptional. Weekly reports going out to clients to show the movement of out-of-home and how audiences are still coming to our shopping centres or coming to our sites. I mean, if COVID was 5 years ago, there's no way that we would have had that, and I don't think we would have been able to rebound as quickly as we have. I also think that probably there was pressure for them to talk more about programmatic, which we didn't get. But when they touched on it, Steve made a comment that it's definitely something for the future, that mobility, data and technology and budgets that won't be cut. So they did touch on programmatic, but I think most of the panel was just talking about, for them, how data is really helping drive their business.
Okay.
in a broad sense.
Ben.
Yeah, I agree with that, Laura. I think given the nature of the conference, sorry, Ben, I've cut you off. But I think given the nature of the conference, perhaps the audience was hoping to hear a little bit more about progress being made with respect to technology, measurement, and that programmatic future. And I think there probably was an element of disappointment that there hasn't probably been as much progress as they would have hoped in the last 12 months. But I think you have to acknowledge that the last 12 to 18 months has been enormously challenging for out-of-home publishers. There's been a significant amount of consolidation in the Australian market, followed by unprecedented bushfires, and then, of course, COVID. So it's been a period of disruption, and our focus has been on many, many things, and probably the progress made in the programmatic space hasn't been as strong as perhaps the buy side would have liked it to be. I think if we can touch on measurement now too, because it was obviously a topic of contention on the day, and I think it's very important to note that Move as an audience measurement system is exceptional. When it was introduced, it was absolutely world-class, and it remains streets ahead of some measurement systems used by other channels and other markets. I think it's fair to say, though, that over the last few years, the media landscape has changed rapidly, both in terms of the inventory we sell with rapid digitisation and the way we sell that inventory. So it is incredibly important that Move develops to address these changes. And I think the OMA know that. And they've invested a huge amount of money, I think, in the realms of $10 million in substantial upgrades to Move, which will once again provide the Australian market world-class audience measurement. And I think that will take time, but it certainly will come at the right time, to Ben's point, to see us really scale programmatic and start to bring that investment across from the digital world.
Okay, that's interesting.
For me, certainly, I thought it was a fantastic panel. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It's very rare to get the heavyweights of out of home all on stage together, talking about common agendas. To Cassandra's point, I think maybe some in the crowd didn't get to hear what they wanted to hear when they were pressed on what percentage of out of home would be spent by programmatic. And to Cassandra's point earlier, I'm at pains to say what percentage, because it assumes that it's a zero-sum game and that it's taking, whereas, as both Laura and Cassandra have spoken to, they're seeing new revenue come into it. But even if you took the most conservative view of, 2%, and that's fine, that's still tens of millions of dollars coming in for next year. And I think as a group, we should be really excited about that, because that's, after bushfires and COVID, that's exponential growth, and it's something that the industry can really embrace.
Brilliant. Well, that's good to know, and thanks for explaining that so well. Just for the audience, really, and yourselves as panelists, the AdTECH conferences that we put on around the world, we always have good debates when it's, route is similar to Move, geopath is similar to Move. And we always have, it's almost like the old guard, the established bit, route is brilliant, Move is brilliant, geopath is brilliant. But the good debates we've had in London, Amsterdam, and New York have always been when the new kids on the block are coming along with something else where they think they can do it better. None of it's ever come to fisticuffs, but it's come close, and we've had lots of verbal debating. And Cassandra, you'd have to moderate that panel really well to do that. So maybe we'll get you to do that next year. We've got a couple of questions in. I'm just going to go on to now. I need to read them. My eyesight's not brilliant. This one's from Singapore. I told you we had people online from Singapore. Thank you, Adrian, and the speakers for the extra slice. I know this person, but I won't use their name. Programmatic DOOH gives the ability to address agility demand from advertisers, of course. Having said that, would you expect programmatic to be widely adopted the same way in city versus airport environments, where the audience-centricness may be less relevant due to less profile diversity than, say, downtown? Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. I can't answer it, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's got relevance in all out-of-home environments, and maybe slightly different applications in each environment. But certainly speaking to people throughout an airport journey, they're in so many different states of mind as they proceed through the airport, and depending on where they're traveling and what their objections are. So it gives advertisers a real opportunity to tailor their message to the part of the journey that they're speaking to that consumer, and to the, the relevance of the destination, etc. So yes, I think that it might be a different application, but I certainly think there's a huge opportunity in that space.
Laura,
I guess the thing about programmatic is that a buyer is able to, I guess, apply, a similar data set as they would to any other kind of digital channel that they're planning programmatically. And what they're trying to achieve is an audience. And I guess if the audience is at an airport or in a supermarket, or I don't know, I think it kind of doesn't matter where they are. It's about a brand connecting with a person in the right moment of time. So I think it just comes down to whatever data set and wherever that audience is. And that's when programmatic is really relevant.
Okay. I'm going to wind you back a little bit because we have a question from Sydney. Do you think that audience measurement systems based on mobile data can displace Move? This is what I was talking about a second ago with the other panels. You're all going to say it's going to augment it, I guess, but do you think it would displace Move, mobile data needs?
Look, I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. I think that there's been a lot of chat about mobile data or other telco data. And I think the reality is there's no silver bullet. The out-of-home environment is incredibly diverse. We have assets in many different environments, consumed by many different audiences. We've got people in cars, people on foot, in internal environments, external environments. So I think there's no one data source that solves the problem. There's no silver bullet. And I think that's why we have to really believe in Move. Move is complex. It takes time because it is complex, and it needs to be to address the complexity of the inventory that we sell. I think around the world, we haven't seen any mature out-of-home market move towards a single data source solution, certainly not a mobile data source solution. And there's a reason why. On its own, it's not sufficient, but certainly combined with other data sources, it can be valuable for advertisers to plan their campaigns. But as a measurement system alone, my personal view is no.
Okay.
I guess the whole measurement talk as well, and on the day measurement came up a lot. And I know that Move are working on, Move 2.0, which is a couple of years away. And I guess too, a lot of panelists, people asking questions, we feel like there is a need for something now, because that will, I think, help to bring confidence, into both from a traditional standpoint and a programmatic standpoint. I think we need to have that standard metric. So measurement is a big debate. And I think that, someone might build something that's a stopgap until Move have something. But I feel like we need to keep working together, whether it's, the IAB working on a stopgap for programmatic until Move, I don't know. But I feel like we do need to come together and kind of figure something out in the short term.
I think working together is a really critical point too. I think there's no point every publisher having their own inventory audience measurement system. I think what the market wants is a robust system, but they want standardization. They need to be able to plan against multiple channels and multiple publishers using one standard system. And so I think we do need to work together, absolutely, to ensure that what we do bring to market is standardized, it's verified, and it's robust enough to be suitable for all of our out-of-home environments, to be the best outcome for the industry as a whole.
Before I ask Ben to comment on this, we did have another question about, so on the day, for those of you who weren't there, we had a panel called Data Snobbery. I keep data, I'll try and use we invented this language, by the way, it's data, not data, but data, data snobbery, which touched on the differences that they see between digital and digital out of home. So, I mean, digital is in online display advertising. I think one of the things that did come out was the fact that people were explaining how the data providers fall into two or three types. People have got their own data. So JCDecaux have got huge amounts of data about their own systems. But there's also aggregated third-party data. So there's two or three different types of that. the question from the audience here is one better than the other for out of home?
Want me to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ben.
So, at the end of the day, I don't think one's necessarily better than the other. It's what's best for the client. When you look at it holistically, programmatic's just a different form of transaction type that brings choice. And choices for buyers to buy the way they want to buy and sellers to sell the way they want to sell. So if a media owner has a data set that they can overlay over their inventory that's going to increase yield, well, absolutely, they should be able to use that. If a buyer has client data, either first or third party data, that they feel that's going to be able to instruct them to buy the right site at the right time, they should be able to overlay that. So I guess at the end of the day, it's whatever's important to the client and is going to sell more ads and get better results for buyers, well, then all that data is relevant.
Okay. Laura?
No, I think I'm just going to say yes, and I do agree with that. And I think both first and third party data is important. I mean, we have our own first party data at Shopper Media. We also have third party data partnerships. So I think it's about using the right, like you've said, the right data for the outcome of what it's needed for.
Yeah. Okay. So just to try and give a summary not really a summary, but try and give an indication to people who couldn't make it to the conference this year. Measurement was obviously key throughout the day, and data was a big conversation piece throughout the day as well. We had a panel, I think it was the last panel of the day, digital and digital out of home. What's the difference? I think this was answered on the day, but of course, those who couldn't get there wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't have heard it. Traditionally, why has it been so hard for out of home to be understood in the online display advertising world?
I don't necessarily think it is misunderstood. Ooh. I just think, this is just me speaking here, but I just think that what digital buyers are trying to do is really, I guess, link out of home to their media campaigns and try and find a way to optimize it against, omni-channel. It's just new. I don't necessarily think it's misunderstood. And I think, digital people have, if you look at the evolution of digital, they've kind of gone through online, mobile, audio, TV, out of home. So I think it's just about figuring out where out of home fits and how they measure and use it.
So you think, Cassandra's going to have something to say on this, but you think that it's the out of home people who think that the online display people don't understand what they're talking about, which is just poor communication, really, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Laura. I think it's just about education. Out of home's not hard to understand. We've got many, many years of data proving the effectiveness. And I think we've spoken to a lot of online buyers this year about our plans for Programmatic in 2021. And they're excited and they understand. They just need to have it explained to them. There are some core differences. It's a one-to-many medium to start with, and so that's a fundamental change to their thinking. But once that's explained, I think they understand, and I think they're very excited. And I think that they also see how complementary out of home is to online campaigns. We've seen time and time again in case studies and research projects that the sum of the parts are much greater than the whole. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 anymore. And so I think, they do understand. They're just really excited to get a hold of it.
I think that I was going to say that the challenge lies is when you're trying to overcomplicate it and you try and take out of home to being a one-to-one media, the same as online. Like at its core, out of home is an incredible medium for telling a story to a large group of people in a short period of time. And it's also one-to-many. So back to that sort of audience question, GPS data and mobile phones are really good at building out audiences and seeing how they move throughout the day, but not to taking it to being a one-to-one.
I guess that comes down to, like, the panel was asked, what is the difference in digital and digital out of home? And the thing is, they're two different medias. And yes, now that digital out of home can be traded in that same way. It does not mean that it will, online is a banner ad, native content. It is that one-to-one. Out of home is a street panel, a panel in a retail environment. So I think that we just need to remember what it is. And I think digital people get it. It's the same with TV, right? That's a one-to-many. It's a broadcast media. And we do overcomplicate it. I think I get asked a lot, what's the difference in programmatic and programmatic direct? And there's nothing. It's the same thing, what we speak to digital buyers about is what the traditional guys speak to, their agencies about. We're speaking about the same panels in locations. I think it's just now with programmatic, it's a new way to access that piece of inventory, and we just need to not complicate it. It's easy.
Yeah, I think Vanessa Hunt actually gave the analogy on the day, which I thought was really powerful, that programmatic out of home, it's not a new channel, and programmatic across multiple different formats is not a new channel. It's just a way to execute an out-of-home strategy, in the same way that programmatic online is just a different way to execute an online strategy, and BVOD the same for TV. Yeah. So I think if people do think about it that way, it's just out of home as you've always bought it, and it's just a different way to execute that transaction.
Excellent. We've got loads of questions. I'm gonna try and speed you up and flick through them all. That is a great quote from Vanessa. I can understand why she was voted the best presenter of the day, if she come up with nuggets of information like that. This is from Australia again. Do you foresee any privacy concerns? Oh, from programmatic, especially with tracking exposed users. If I can get the answer is going to be yes, I guess, but a quick answer from all of you on that one.
I can go first. There could be a few down the track. I guess we're really fortunate, being a global company, that we've seen it with the California restrictions in the US, and then also in the UK as well, with the applications there, and being able to work around it. But it may be an issue, but generally what you find is number of device IDs goes down, then spikes back up again. Okay.
Laura, something you thought about shopper media?
Yeah, look, I mean, for us here, we have our own first-party data. So we've got Wi-Fi connection points in all of our shopping centres, so we can see our audiences in real time there. And we aren't using third-party to kind of look at, I guess, the kind of audience reach that we have. I don't know. I think we'll just have to wait and see with privacy what happens. If I don't know. Yeah.
I think it's important to note that the data sets that are available in the Australian market are all anonymised data anyway. We can track devices. We don't know who they are. We can build a profile of the sorts of things that they might be, but we don't know their name. And so I think, we'll remain compliant with Australian law, and obviously there's been progression in other markets with respect to privacy laws, and that may come to Australia, but I don't think it will change the way that we trade and the way we use data sets available locally.
To answer the person on the webinar call who answered the question, it's a topic of conversation that comes up at not just our AdTECH conferences, but any digital signage or media summits that we do. More so in America, I think, than anywhere else, but it's always a topic of conversation, and it needs to be handled delicately, I think, so that we don't make any big mistakes that expose us and we get front pages of your national newspapers. That's the big issue, I think. This is a very good question. So keep the questions coming in. We're going to try and get through them all. This is the tech fee question. Now, this is interesting because, as far as I know, the tech fee question has popped up a lot in the UK recently. I know in AdTECH London event we're doing in December, we've got a session about it. So to phrase the question so you all know what I'm talking about, currently Programmatic has a huge tech fee, which brings down the media spend by a hefty percentage. Ben may be smiling or smirking or cowering at this point. Do you think in 2021, the additional fee that goes to the tech fee, the SSP, or somebody doing the measurement will be lower because advertisers need to get higher value in transacting the out-of-home spend programmatically? You all know what the tech fee is, I'm assuming. Do you want to start, Ben, being one of those people who takes that little tech fee?
Throwing me.
I didn't say it was going to be an easy ride, Ben.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, I don't think it needs to necessarily be lower. It's just got to be completely transparent. I think if there's complete transparency at every single part throughout the chain, and people are comfortable with that, well, then everyone can proceed. So with us, certainly from Vistar, we're about, delivering as much value as possible, but being incredibly transparent with both the buy side and the sell side on exactly what those fees are and how they're occurred.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cassandra,
I agree.
sorry, you go ahead, Laura. Apologies.
I was just agreeing with what you were saying there. I think it is all about transparency, because you can read a ton of reports that come out to talk about, that 15% of unknown that's happening in programmatic. And I guess, if there is, more transparency in the way we're transacting, I guess you can figure out where that 15% is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Transparency really is the key. We're trading through View as an SSP. They don't charge any buy-side fees. And so a buyer will have, full clarity on what they're paying with their DSP or with any data providers that they're engaged with. It's really up to an advertiser to decide, does the cost of that data and the cost of trading programmatically weigh up against the additional benefits of that programmatic campaign? And they'll make a decision. Either it does, it's a net benefit to them to trade that way, or if it doesn't, then they can trade that campaign directly and avoid those fees. But certainly for some advertisers, it will make sense.
Okay, another question from the audience. Is there a reluctance for the out-of-home publishers, media owners, with programmatic around protecting their assets and the power of location? So are people not using it because of that? Cassandra probably would be a good place to start.
Yeah, look, my sense, and again, I think it was talked about on the day, and Laura mentioned it briefly this morning, a sense that there is some fear when it comes to publishers about programmatic. It's unknown. And certainly in online environments, we have seen it drive yields down for some publishers. So I think there's a fear from publishers that programmatic won't necessarily grow revenue, and it may see us experience declining yields. My personal opinion is that shouldn't be the case. And having spoken to a lot of buyers this year, I think they understand that when it comes to programmatic out of home, we're not selling remnant inventory. We are selling high quality inventory, the exact same inventory that a direct advertiser would buy with us. And I think the additional benefits provided to advertisers in terms of additional flexibility, data, audience targeting capabilities, etc., mean that most advertisers do understand and are willing to pay a premium to trade programmatically. So I don't think that there's a huge sense that yields will decline. I think one challenge for out of home is that there are elements of effectiveness in out of home impact that are difficult to measure and therefore difficult to put into a platform and trade algorithmically. And so I think that, understanding that not all programmatic screens are created equally, and certainly not all out of home screens are created equally, there is a need for education and for buyers to factor that in when they're allocating their investment across different deals and different out of home formats.
Brilliant. Okay. I have got in front of me the best question of the day. I'm not allowed to have favorites. I'm going to read out the person's name, if I can pronounce it well, because it really is a good question. Lauren Yelovich. So thank you for this question. This is a really good question. Programmatic gives advertisers more power for the right time messaging. That leads to more content challenges. There you go. See, we got onto the thorny subject of content. You know where this is going now, don't you? There's obviously there's naturally a lot of talk about audience measurement and trading, which involves media agencies. What is being done by the industry to help creative agencies better understand the potential of programmatic? That's a good question.
It's a great question. Sorry, you go, Laura.
I was going to say, I know Lauren Yelovich.
Oh.
Good question to ask, throwing it in there. I don't know. I think that's a tricky one. We're talking about creative here, right? And how, I guess, creative can be better used programmatically. Is that what we're getting from the question? I think that it's really tough because, I don't know, at the conference, we had the Australian tourism clients speak, and creative is so important across every channel that we use. And I mean, if we could have a ton of creative that, you know, a creative budget where we could have, you know, 10 pieces of creative across, you know, every channel of out of home, as well as TV, as well as online, you know, everything would be spent in creative. I think it's really hard to potentially, I don't know, have creative specific to each category. But I feel that maybe media owners could do a little bit more, maybe having creative departments that could help in terms of, you know, this creative is right for retail. If you let us know what you're doing, what your brand's outcome is, let us take that and make it relevant and more powerful. And I actually think this, I shouldn't say this, but I actually think QMS are doing something like that. Should I plug our competitors? I don't know.
What was
maybe
the
I
name
went on a tangent. Maybe
the name of the company again, Laura?
QMS.
I think this isn't a challenge for programmatic out of home. This has been a challenge in out of home for a really long time. Is that, you know, people want to put a print ad on a billboard, or in programmatic terms, a banner ad on a billboard, and obviously that's not going to get the most effective result from your out of home campaign. So our creative solutions team spend a lot of time in market speaking to creative agencies about the best use of out of home, how best to create really effective, engaging, creative and out of home. And of course, all the planning in the world and all the data targeting is not going to get an outstanding result if your creative's not right. So it's a critical element of an out of home campaign, is really customizing that creative to the environment that you're displaying in. And understanding that out of home is a glance medium. So you can't put a banner ad or a print ad on a billboard and expect that people will engage with it the same way they do. You need to customize that message. And I think education, again, is going to be critical there, really engaging with creative agencies and with clients directly, and showing them examples of really exceptional out of home creative to inspire them to bring similar creative to their campaigns.
Right. I've got a question for Ben about, this is really about specialists. How do you foresee specialist out-of-home companies, and some of them may have their own DSP, competing with other DSPs?
So I guess was sort of taking it as being like the Vistars, the Hivestacks, Broadsigns of the world being specialists versus the omni-channels.
Right.
And the reality is something that we sort of debated internally for a while. Until we went that, you know, once again, our philosophy is that it's all about choice. And so we opened the doors up completely, and we're partners with all of them. So really excited to be partners with the Trade Desk, with Verizon, with Amobi. So that's been a big shift in our mentality. And so it's buyers can buy the way they want to buy. And if a buyer wants to go through an omni-channel DSP, well, then we support that via an SSP. And that's the way we interact. We co-present in market, and we work on deals together.
A follow-on question, it could almost be a follow-on question. Is there a long-term view that media publishers need to be connected to only one SSP? At the moment,
think publishers are going to take a different approach here. Obviously, JCDecaux work exclusively with the View SSP. In many markets globally, but View has an agnostic DSP approach. So via View as an SSP, we'll be connected with many DSPs and therefore able to trade with advertisers regardless of their choice. I think, you know, Laura, you might have a different opinion.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. I don't know if there'll be one that comes out on top. I mean, at the moment, we're working with both Hivestack and Vistar SSPs. I mean, we aren't a big global JCDecaux who has created our own. But I mean, I just think we'll see what happens in time, you know, yeah, I'm just going to give it a time thing.
I would just say
Ben's like, Laura, answer the question.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like, once again, we're all about choice. For buyers to be able to buy the way they want to buy, and sellers to sell the way they want to sell. And if a seller wants to have multiple SSPs, well, we're happy to be one of them. If someone wants to work exclusively with us, well, then we're happy to be that exclusive partner. But very much Vista's philosophy is open marketplace and provide choice for different transaction types.
Brilliant. That was a good question. Thank you for that. More coming in. This might be for you, Laura. It's an agency sort of question. do you think that agencies are holding themselves back from transacting programmatically because it can spark operational challenges? I think they're being polite with the word operational challenges. Might be to do with money. And are there programmatic teams and traditional media teams in those agencies fighting over the same type of business?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I hope they're not fighting. I don't know if they're holding back. I just think that agencies are just trying to work out the best way to approach programmatic digital out of home, if I'm honest. They obviously have to go on and be able to sell that into a client. I guess, especially if you're trying to shift a budget from an out-of-home spender to push them programmatically, like they're figuring out what the benefits are and the why they would be doing that, what clients it actually works for. So I don't know if they're holding back. I just think that they're taking their time to understand what programmatic digital out-of-home is and then come into it. And, I've been in this role for a year. Group M has been very active in trading throughout the entire time I've been here. And the other guys are just, they're there. Where I think Ben touched on it earlier, we've got Dentsu who are looking at doing their first campaign. We've got publicists who are starting to trade and do tests. So they're all there. It's just they've taken different timeframes to figure it out.
Okay. Jumping on that one, we have another question. I'm trying to link them together, so we're jumping around a bit. But traditionally, our AdTECH conferences have got lots of brands and clients along. We've always done a very good job of doing that in different markets. Last year, we had some great clients and brands come along. Some of the feedback from the Sydney conference was that they'd like to see more clients present, and that they didn't see very many at this year's conference. That was probably due to the fact that we didn't have that many. We could only fit 100 people in the cinema, so we sold out tickets quite quickly. But what do you think as a panel in terms of clients? How are we going to get more clients and brands along to these sorts of conferences? I guess it's when they're doing case studies is a good way. Maybe you can also give us some examples of some good client and brand usage of programmatic at the moment as well. I'll start with you, Cassandra, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I think it'll come in time. I think we are in our infancy, and there probably haven't been a huge number of brands playing in this space yet. I think when we meet in 2021, we'll see a lot more case studies available to us. I think the MediaCom team presented some case studies on the day with some really encouraging results. And so we're really looking forward to partnering with brands in 2021 to run some great campaigns, invest in some research and case studies that we can then start to take to market and drive that demand into the future. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time.
Okay. Laura?
Look, I mean, I touched on it earlier. We've had, 20 new brands come into Shopper Media since we've been trading programmatically. And I think a lot of the brands are probably more kind of data-led. So it's kind of been an easy shift from them. They've already been trading programmatic, BVOD, and, online, etc. for a while. I'm sure that Ben has a few case studies from Vistar that he can go through. I know I touched on it earlier. We've worked with MIQ. We've done a case study for an online retailer, which unfortunately I can't name, but it really showed the power of how out of home helped to drive ROI online. It drove greater basket sizes for this online retailer. So I think hopefully we can just get more case studies up in the next year. And I think that will come because, we've got more agencies now starting to jump on board and trade.
Yeah, 20 brands is impressive. We probably, as an industry, we need to promote that more. Vistar Media globally actually are our go-to company. If I want a case study in Amsterdam or a case study in Toronto or New York, Vistar Media can supply me half a dozen usually, and I get the pick. So that's always quite good. And let's just go through the questions some more. We've got another one. I think if they're not anonymous, I think I can say their name. David Sutherland has asked, how important is verification in programmatic?
I think verification remains really important to advertisers, whether they're trading programmatically or not. They want, to prove that they got what they paid for, and they want to be able to see that reported and verified by a third party. And so I think, it's the same as it is via Direct.io. We've got a number of players coming into the market offering third party verification services. And certainly we're willing to work with all of them. If that's important to an advertiser, then it's important to us.
And I agree with Cass. Verification is definitely important, and it has been on, like you've said, it's been on the agenda for at least the last 3 years in out of home with, DailyDOOH, JCDecaux, and the likes of those guys, and they are working, with the guys like Ben and Hivestacks on what that looks like in the programmatic space as well. So I think you're right. Clients need to know that what they've paid for has been delivered. So it is important.
We agree, and are actively working with all the major verification businesses and looking to onboard them onto the platform. For us, it's as clients ask it and give us their preferences, we will work to integrate with them in that order.
We had, could someone explain quickly the methodology behind Move? Can somebody do that in a minute?
We don't use Move, so I'm going to pass it over to someone else who does.
Yeah, look, I think the 30-second summation is pretty difficult, but certainly dive onto the OMA website because they've got an exceptional video which explains exactly how Move works in a whole lot of detail, and they'll do a much better job of it than I will.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to mention that one. I think we've answered this, actually. It was quite a long question. Digital buyers are used to having lots of measurement tools at their fingertips, ad servers, verification, etc. The question I think was answered earlier, but there's an expectation that this also exists in digital out of home. I think we're saying it does with the verification tools that are coming along. This person commented it's very early, nascent, and the tools they use to measure ROI aren't readily available. Would we agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of measuring effectiveness of ad campaigns, it really depends on the campaign and the campaign's objectives. I think one thing that was mentioned on the day by Patrick was just because you can't measure it doesn't mean it didn't work. And so I think we have to take a bit of an approach in out of home that not everything is going to be able to be measured perfectly for every campaign. That doesn't mean it's not effective. And as we progress, as more data sources become available, we will get better and better at that sort of attribution measurement. But I think, not being able to attribute your ad to a very defined metric, as you may be able to in some other media channels, doesn't mean that out of home is not an effective media channel. So it's about understanding the role of out of home, the limitations of data sources available, and what your campaign objectives are in order to find a way to best measure the campaign outcomes.
Okay. For us, I guess there's two different types of measurement. One is campaign measurement, and we're really fortunate to be able to use device IDs, so exposed device IDs versus mover-like audiences that weren't exposed, to be able to test out and prove out both brand awareness, likelihood to purchase, etc., but also really importantly footfall studies. And so carrying out really great footfall studies that we did for the likes of Specsavers, where we were able to show an absolute increase in store traffic based upon their programmatic digital out-of-home activity, which was awesome. And we'll be doing a lot more of those in the months ahead. The other one is did my campaign run? And I think it's really important that we start to work, and we are working and integrating with all the verification partners we spoke to before. In the interim, what we're using is DCM pixels, which every time that you put that onto the creative, every time it fires, you'll know that your ad has played and how many people saw it.
And Laura,
I think that just goes to kind of show that the measurement piece as well is so big for out of home, there is a lot to be done, because it is about, well, what should we be measuring? What are we measuring against? And I think there's a lot of questions around that. I know the IAB are working on stuff. I know the OMA are working on things. So I think measurement is tough. And I really do like what Patrick Darcy said, the fact that just because, you can't attribute something to that ad in out of home. Out of home is powerful. Like, you know, my commute to work this morning was pre-COVID. It took me an hour. I went past a few JCDecaux panels. I mean, then the numbers are there. Audiences are seeing out of home. You can't miss it. So it is powerful for brands. And I think we just need to keep reminding people that we're not comparing to online and other channels. We're a broadcast medium that reaches mass. And now that we can trade programmatically, we can, you know, build a campaign that can target an audience with a higher propensity to be there. That is more targeted, but it's still.
I should just say for the audience who weren't there, or today's audience, Patrick Darcy from Dentsu was the keynote speaker. I think we all agreed that he was probably the best keynote speaker that we'd ever got for any conference. So hats off to Joe Copley from CD, who managed to persuade Patrick to come along and present. He was very well thought of. Pipped at the post by Vanessa, of course. I've got a question. Well, it's not a question. Ben Wall, who was last year's best speaker. Ben, you came in 3rd or 4th this year, mate. So you let the side down a little bit. But Ben Wall from MediaCom, that Cassandra was talking about before, has asked Laura and Cassandra, can I get some pops, please? I don't know what a POP is.
Good one, Ben.
He knows how to rile me up.
So for anyone who does want to know what a pop is, it's a photograph which is taken in a traditional out-of-home campaign to show that the campaign has run.
I see, okay.
Proof of posting.
Gotcha. Oh, proof of posting. God, that's old school. Right. Another question. We've got a few minutes left. I want to tick these off. Cassandra and Laura, how do you currently manage your inventory when you have limited amount of inventory available, programmatic versus direct? Do direct buys have priority? Ooh, that's a good question again.
Do you want to go
first, Laura?
It's a tricky one,
I
isn't it?
can go first, to be honest. This is something that we're still working on at Shopper, and we would love to have a spot in the loop for programmatic. And I guess up until now, where we're starting to see demand pick up, it kind of has been a bit manual. We've been working really closely with the Vistar team to, I guess, when they've got a campaign live, ensure that we're opening up the inventory for that campaign to run. And you know what? It's manual and it's not how programmatic should work. But I think that once we kind of do have the demand, which I've said is picking up, we'll move into the new year and have, you know, that allocated set of inventory to programmatic.
Yeah, I think it's right. It's a little bit chicken and egg. You know, publishers don't want to put too much of their inventory out there until there's a sufficient demand pool. But it's hard to build demand until you have sufficient supply. And so we've recently moved away from the carousel model for our digital large format inventory, and we're now selling a share of time model. And that allows us to allocate a certain percentage of time on every screen to be traded programmatically. And I really believe that by guaranteeing an element of supply to the market so that advertisers can execute programmatically when and where they want to, that will help to build demand. And as demand builds, we'll look to allocate a greater percentage of time on the inventory to trade programmatically. I think that's also really important because we don't want programmatic out of home to be a remnant inventory play. We don't want it to be the leftovers. It is high quality inventory, the same quality available to direct advertisers. And so by guaranteeing supply, I think programmatic advertisers will know that they're not getting second class inventory. They're getting the best of the best. They're just getting it on their terms.
Brilliant.
And that's the thing with the whole, with remnant, I guess that's the thing, right? If we look at programmatic when it started years ago, it was remnant, and it's very much moved away from that, you know, even in the online world, native homepages, all of those things that were once not available are available programmatically. So I think it is just about understanding that programmatic is planned like any other media plan and signed off in advance. It is just executed in a real-time manner, but they are real budgets and it's not last minute and it's not remnant. And I think that's a bit of an education piece too. Brilliant.
Well, we're running out of time. We've ended on a high with a brilliant question. That was from Arno in Australia. I'm going to ask you very quickly, you know what, when you do these TV shows and you asked just for a one-liner, what was Ben, what was the best thing about the conference for you?
The interaction and getting people together. Hopefully
Laura?
we can make it bigger and
Oh, sorry.
Look,
I was just saying, hopefully we can get everyone from all the borders and all the walks of Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia with the next ones.
Laura?
Yeah, it was being in the room with everybody. I think that it was so nice after being, I guess, in lockdown for so long to have everyone in the industry back together and see those familiar faces and try to work out if you can kiss them or hug them or what you're doing to be COVID safe. But yeah, it was a great day. And your panel as well, Cass, highlight.
Thank you. Too kind.
Cassandra?
Echo those sentiments. It was just really brilliant to be back in the presence of colleagues. As I think I said on LinkedIn, there's a real sense of energy when we meet together in a room, and it was really exciting to get us back together. I think we're starting to see some real green shoots of positivity in the out-of-home space as we near Q4, and I think 2021 is going to be a really exciting year.
Good. We hope so too. Well, we think that there's nothing beating a face-to-face meeting, which is why we do them around the world. I'm just going to end up. I'd like to thank all the online attendees. There's just a couple of slides where I can tell you where to find things, which are going to play in a second, I think. This webinar has been recorded and will be added to that playlist that you should be able to see now for Sydney. And then the next slide is just a thank you message, I think, for the Outdoor Media Association of Australia, who helped us promote this event, the Out-of-Home Media Association for Terra, and then a couple of people, one company DailyDOOH, that's me, and the nice guys in New Zealand who gave us publicity for that. So just to say, the next conferences we have, AdTECH Out-of-Home Singapore will take place in April next year, and AdTECH Out-of-Home Tokyo will also take place in April next year. So thank you, Laura, thank you, Cassandra, and thank you, Ben, for spending an hour with me. I do hope that the attendees we had today got something out of the conference. I know that they would have been pretty desperate, I think, to attend the conference in person. They couldn't. Next year will be bigger and better when we all get together. We're hopeful a successful year for everybody in 2021. So thank you all.
Thank you, Adrian.
Oh, we do the wave. We do the Zoom wave. The Zoom wavers. #Zoom wavers.